Hello, and welcome to another Sitecore Stories. Today I'm catching up with Caroline Couri, and she's going to be telling us all about the new layers feature inside Sitecore Pages. So, let's dive in. Okay, thanks for joining me here today, Caroline.
Thanks for having me again, Rob.
So I know you've been on one of these videos before, but in case someone hasn't seen that, can you give people a brief introduction to yourself and your role here at Sitecore?
Yeah, absolutely. So just quick recap. I do have a background in digital marketing and website development. And now today as a product manager for XM Cloud, I oversee initiatives on how to build and use visuals to present content and create exciting experiences for your audience.
Awesome. And I know you're going to be talking a little bit about a new feature in Pages for XM Cloud today. Before we dive into that, can you talk a little bit about why we built it out? What was the problems we were seeing? Why was it needed?
Yeah, so we call it the layout layers. And it's actually just a super neat addition to our page builder in XM Cloud that really makes that final visual editing experience extra smooth and quick. So it actually solves a handful of just small quirky problems with visual editing that you tend to find in an advanced product like XM Cloud. So for example, we have this concept of partial designs where you can build page sections to be used across multiple pages. But unlike the standard components that you build the final page with, the layout and the content in those sections is managed in a central place. And that also means that the marketer in the page builder can't actually update the content of a partial design directly on that page. But so far, there's been no indication to the user that that specific section is coming from a partial design. So that's just one example. And then another example is that it's a bit more generic, which is that when you work with multiple visual elements nested within one another, such as columns, containers, components, and fields, or all of those coming together to create that final presentation, then the marketer who's building these elaborate web pages will often find that it can be a little tricky sometimes to, on the screen, select the exact element that they want to edit, or to drop a new component in the correct spot in the first place. So that's just to mention a couple.
Yeah, super useful. So can you show us this in action then?
I absolutely can. So now let's assume I am a marketer. I am working on this homepage for my company's site on financial services. So let's say this is a brand new homepage, and I have just built this out by having a blank page with a couple of partial designs. And I have gone and I've dragged on a bunch of components that I know I want to be using on this page. When I now look at the page, you can see it's quite elaborate. It's got a lot of components and a lot of content on here. And you can see some of it I can click, and I can see that I can go in and I can edit it. But other things I can't click, and it's not really clear to me why. Another thing is that I haven't really structured this page the way that I wanted to yet. So what I can do now is that I can go and I can switch over to this new layers view that we have introduced. And I can see that let me just collapse this to make it a bit easier to see. My page here consists of a header section, a main section, and a footer section. And I can see that the header section is populated with a partial design, and I can select that. So even though I can't edit anything directly in it, I can now select it. And if I needed to update, let me take the footer as an example instead. I'm just going to select that. Let's say I needed to update the link here in our privacy policy. You can see nothing is happening when I hover on it. I can't edit it. But if I do have the permissions to edit this partial design, I would be able to just click the context menu in the layers view and open it. It's going to open the partial design in the partial design editor interface here. And I could go ahead and I could update this, and it's going to be reflected on all of the pages that's using this partial design. When I close it, I will come back to the page that I was on before. And there we go. We're back on the home page, and my link would have been updated. So that's one little benefit that we didn't have before. Then another thing is that I can see now the structure. Let me collapse all of these components here. Of the components that I have dropped on this page that now make up the visual presentation of this page. So you can see in this main section here, all of the components that I dropped on earlier are now reflected here in the main section. And what happens is that when I browse through this main section, you can see what's happening on the screen is that when I go over a component, it highlights in my canvas area, and I will be able to see which component is where. And I can also, let me take this component here, expand it, and I can see these are all of the fields that belong to this component that I can edit, and I would be able to click it. And it would be selected, and I could go ahead over here on my right-hand side and edit the field properties that I have selected now directly from my layers view. Cool. What I could also do is that if I'm not happy with the order that I have dropped the components in here, I could go ahead and say, actually, I think it looks a little bit odd that I have a component here with 5 columns and a white background, and then a component with 3 columns and a white background just sitting next to each other. But I can see further down that I have these 2 promo components. Maybe I could use one of those a bit further up just to create a visually nicer experience here. So I would see that this component, that's my promo CTA here. So I will take this and I will drag that in between my 2 components that I want to split up. And you can see it should update shortly. That's now this looks much neater with a clear separation now between those components. And the same goes for this app promo component that I have here. I actually wanted this to be at the bottom of my page, so I can scroll down. Now I just selected it and I can see that is the component here. Grab that and put it here. And it should update immediately. Now, the other thing is that if I realize that there is a component that I intended to use on this site that I haven't added yet, I could go ahead and say, actually, underneath this carousel component up here, I wanted another component to be added. I could go ahead and I could just add it directly from this panel as well. Now, the difference between when you use the existing drag and drop functionality that we have and then adding a component directly from the layers is that if you have built your site in a way that your components can only be dropped in placeholders that have been defined to accept those components, let's say, so you can see now I have these article components. If my instance or if my site had been created in a way that these article components would only be allowed in placeholders on article pages, I wouldn't be able to select these components here. So it's a way of just creating a little bit of governance when you have multiple people working on a single site. So that's one benefit of being able to add components directly from the layers panel. Another thing is that to come back to one of the examples that I also mentioned that could be a bit tricky is, so you can see that I have built out a little layout system here where I've got a column splitter, and it's got one column with one container, and it's got another column with 2 rows. So when I just look at this here in my canvas, it can be difficult, especially if maybe I wasn't the one who built this layout, to understand the elements coming together here. So what I can see is I can go to my layers view, and I can see that this is the container that is containing the rest of the containers. So this is the main container. It has a container here that consists of a column splitter. So you can see right now when I switch between these two, visually nothing happens. But this does make a difference. Let's say if I wanted to add one more container in the main container, to populate with components, then I could go ahead and say that in here, before the column splitter, I want to add one more container, and I'll get to the point of why this is useful to build, or can be useful to build pages this way. So let me add a container like this. So now you can see I have my main container with a couple of containers inside. And let's say I populate these containers now with components. But when I go ahead and I publish this page, maybe I do want to experiment by creating an A/B test to see that if I hide this entire section, in which case I would need to select the full container, hide everything inside it in an A/B test, I could do that very easily just for that main container instead of having to go single component by single component and do that. So that's one of the benefits of working with a layout system like this, but it also makes it a little tricky when it comes to the visual inline editing. So that's one of the problems that this layers view here also solve. Now, speaking of getting to the final actions, let's imagine that I have now built out this page with the structure and the content that I want it to be for my final page. And I want to go in and say that, okay, I'm ready to create an A/B test, for example. I'll just use a different component as an example. For this component, let me find it here. Let's say, oh, actually, I want to do it for the main component here at the top, the carousel. I could just select this component and go ahead and create my A/B test here directly from the context panel as well. And the same goes for, let's say I have this promo component further down, maybe not this one, maybe this one, and say, okay, actually, as a final action, I think this text could be optimized a bit. It could be a bit better. I could just go ahead from the context panel here and launch my content optimization tool on the right-hand side. And I would be able to use my quick actions here to quickly apply an optimization action to the content of this component. So it's a super simple feature. It really does enrich in this existing editing experience, just making it a little easier and a little faster.
Yeah, I love that. It makes it super clear where everything's positioned on the page. I really like the partial layouts as well and how they're exposed, because as you say, they were a little bit hidden previously in the other viewing pages. So getting access to those is fantastic, I think.
Exactly. And the thing is, right, even if you don't have access to edit the partial design, at least you can understand now when you go to your layers view why you're not able to edit any of these links here if you intended to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess the final thing to finish off with here is, if anyone has any questions about layers in pages or anything else around the app, what's the best way to get hold of you, Caroline?
Well, you're always very welcome to send me an email. You can reach me at caroline.couri@sitecore.com, or you're also welcome to send me a connection request on LinkedIn. My name is Caroline Couri.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me again today, Caroline. Hopefully we get to speak again soon.
I hope so. Thanks for having me again, Rob.